Welcome to the Stronger Marriage Podcast. It has been a couple of weeks since we've been here. We are excited to be back. Got a good episode today.
Welcome to the Stronger Marriage Podcast with Trey and Lee. On this podcast, you'll hear real topics about real life. They cover everything from married sex to raising kids to loving your spouse so much that you're willing to forgive them for occasionally being the most annoying person in the world. Trey and Lee have raised 4 boys, been married over 30 years, and somehow still really like each other. And now, live from the metropolis of Childress, Texas, a place so flat you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. Here are your hosts for the Stronger Marriage Podcast, Trey and Lee Morgan.
Hello, everybody.
I want to say welcome to Lee Morgan today. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Been a good week. We were gone last week. Did not podcast. We had given you a heads up that we were going to be in Alaska. We had a great time. Met some awesome couples from Alaska. And we have a big crew who listen to our podcast from Alaska. And we want to say a shout out to all our Alaskan family.
Yeah, that's great.
It was a great time. We got up to Alaska a couple of days early and did some looking around. What all did we do?
Man, we did. We crammed a lot of stuff into a short period of time.
We did.
We hiked up to an old gold mine from the early 1900s.
Hatcher Pass, absolutely
Hatcher's
gorgeous.
Pass, and then we took a train ride out of Anchorage to Seward. About a 4-hour train ride. Got on a boat in Seward and took a 6-hour boat tour of some glaciers and saw humpback whales and orcas and otters and sea lions and seals and all of the things. It was really cool.
And then we got back on a train.
Got back on the train. It was a long day, but it was
a lot of fun.
I mean, talk about seeing a lot of Alaska in a short amount of time. So,
what did you like better, the train ride or the boat ride?
I liked the boat ride.
Why? Yeah, you got to see lots of. We don't see,
Well,
we can see sights, mountains,
right.
and trees, and Alaska's amazing, but we don't get to see things like orcas in the wild and things like that.
Seeing the marine life in their natural habitat was just pretty awesome, and they just put on a show for us, which was really great. You, however, did not enjoy the boat ride so much.
It was a rough day at sea.
It was a rough day.
And for
at sea.
guys who motion sickness, I did great for a while. They had said that the water would be rough, and man, people started bailing out and going to the back of the boat to get sick, and I thought, nah, not me, I got this. Took a little Dramamine before I left, and I made it about 15 minutes into this. I mean, it was rough, and Lee said, you okay? And I said, I think I'm going to go outside for a while.
I'm going to join the people in the back of the boat.
We became friends,
Yes.
all of us in the back of the boat. That was my family for the next couple hours.
What'd you say? The sea giveth and the sea taketh away.
Yeah.
Because we had just eaten lunch.
They
That was the
fed
worst.
us. We got on this boat and
The
they
worst
fed
part about it.
us food, and then 30 minutes later we're in rough waters,
Yes.
and definitely the sea took away that.
I think in retrospect, we would have waited to eat lunch until we got past that and then into some calmer waters. I think that might have helped a little bit.
Well, I probably still would
You
have
wouldn't have felt good, but you wouldn't have had anything to
give me the sea
sacrifice
back.
to the sea.
Yeah, I chummed the waters, me and a bunch of other people for the whatever it was.
Yes.
Yeah, it was rough, but
Yes, it was. It
enjoy
really
the
was.
laughter. If you follow me on my personal Instagram page,
It was some rough seas. There were
pretty
things
funny.
flying off of people's tables. The drinks were flying into the floor. It really was a very
But we were
rough.
trying to get to a glacier. We wanted to see a glacier.
Yes.
And then we got there, and I thought, I've seen one of these. Was this worth it? But you had not.
It was.
Hey, we're talking a important subject today called communication in marriage and why it's so important. We talk a little bits and pieces about communicating, but we want to spend a whole podcast focusing on communication. Some people do it better than others. Some couples do it better than others. Some sexes do it better than others. Women are better communicators than men.
Right. And we're not going to just talk about communication, we're also going to talk about conversation. And
Wait,
you're
is
going,
that not the same thing?
I know. See,
Yeah.
you're going, what? There's no difference. There really is a difference between conversation and communication. And so we're going to just kind of cover all of the aspects of talking in marriage. Talking is important.
It's essential. That's
Yes.
exactly right. You know, we as couples, I think women naturally just communicate better than men. I've read somewhere, we talk about this in our workshop, that men speak on average, most men, about 12,000 words a day, with women 25,000 words a day. So about twice as many words for women as men. Don't know if that's true. Somebody came up with that
Yeah,
statistic.
I don't know
but,
where that ever came
in
from.
Texas, I always say 25,000 words with gusts up to 30,000 for the women folk. But men, your wife gets frustrated when you come home and she says, "How was your day?" "It was good." "What did you do today?" And you say nothing. She knows you did something, and that's part of communication, and we're going to talk about that. And so it's important that you save some of that 12,000 words for your wife. Don't use them all up before you get home. Save some of that. But that is important. Yeah, it really is. Why is it important?
We fell in love because we talked and we got to know each other, and we'll remain in love for that same reason. You know, you think after you're married for 30 years that you know everything there is to know about your spouse, but that's really simply not the case. You've got to continue to get to know each other, and the way you do that is talking to each other.
Yeah, and it's true. You may have been first attracted to your spouse because they were handsome, or they made you laugh, or she may have been pretty, but you didn't fall in love for those reasons. You fell in love because y'all started talking and you connected emotionally. And to remain in love in your marriage where that connection is still there, you've got to continue to talk. And we change over time. You know, I've always said, you know, we learned early in our relationship when we got married, you know, your favorite ice cream flavors, which that's not a huge important thing, but I always think it's cool, was always chocolate and orange sherbet together, which I always thought was a little odd. But, you know, unless you ask questions, you don't find out until, you know, several years later that your flavor has changed, and you kind of butter pecan has kind of moved to the top of your list. That's right.
Yeah. And that's true. We do change. Lots of things change about us over the course of years.
So it's good to ask questions. Now, you and I met very young. We've known each other more
since we were
of
children.
our lives
Yes.
than we have not.
Yes.
And so it's tough for us sometimes to come up with new things we don't know about each other. And so sometimes we have to dig into, you know, what did you like in elementary school? Or, you know, there's some good questions, and we talked about that. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But I want to remind you, can I tell a story about when we were dating? This was late 80s, folks. And so in the late 80s, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't text. You made a phone call or you wrote a letter. And I remember picking you up for dates. You were still living with your parents because we were teenagers, and we were falling in love, but I'd pick you up, find out what time you needed to be home, and we would take a blanket and go to the park. Generally, we'd pick up some fast food or something, and we'd go sit at the park and just talk for hours. Just talk, sitting out in the grass or in the pickup or somewhere, and we would talk about all those things like, why do you like chocolate and orange sherbet? And why is your Uncle Alan, why is he so crazy? Or why is, you know, whatever it was, we'd just go down the list of things that we would just, how many kids do you want? What do you want to be when you grow up? Whatever it was. But we'd just talk for hours. And then before you knew it, one of us, back when we used to wear watches, would go, whoa, I'm supposed to be home in 15 minutes. And we'd load up, and I'd take you back to the house, and I'd get that kiss on your front porch that I wanted. Your mom always left the porch light on when you had not come in. And I don't know if that was because she didn't want us kissing too long out there and wanted lights on, or just because it was easier to come in. But
probably both.
But I would drop you off, and then I would go to my house across town. And I remember coming into my house, and of course it'd be dark. It'd probably be midnight, and everybody'd be asleep. But I'd go to the kitchen looking for food. But in the kitchen, for you old schoolers in here, y'all will like this story. In the kitchen, we had at our house growing up a phone that was, get this, attached to the wall. Yeah, literally attached to the wall, and had a really long phone cord. And you couldn't do anything on this phone but make phone calls. Now, if you're listening to this and you're under 24 years old, you're going, really? But I would, mind blown. I would walk past that phone and think, man, I would really like to call her. Even though we just talked, I would like to talk to her some more. But we hadn't lined this up. We hadn't made plans to do this. And I would want to do this, but it was 12 o'clock at night. And I would sit there and think, do I do it? Do I not do it? And of course, at that time in my life where you take more risks and you're young and you don't always think things through, it's like, yeah, I'm going to call her. And so I would put my little finger in that little circle and rotate that little rotary dial around the phone. And by the time I'd get to your 7th number, I'd have some little sweat beads on my head, and I'd be really nervous because there's going to be 2 problems here. Number one, I don't know who's going to answer this phone. It could be that brown-eyed, brown-haired girl that I really hope is going to pick up, but there's also a phone by mom and dad's bed. And so not having caller ID in those days, I'd already decided if the wrong person answers, I'm hanging this phone up. They're not going to know. And if it rings more than about once, you're not ready. And I remember that phone ringing, and about half a ring in, I would hear this, hello, just real soft, hello. And I would go, is that you? And you'd say, yeah, it is. And we would talk for another hour on the phone. Yeah, it's like crazy. We used to talk forever and ever. And that's why we fell in love, was because we talked. And as Lee said a while ago, that's why we'll remain in love, for the same reason.
That's right. You mentioned the caller ID and they wouldn't know, but I probably never even told you.
Uh-oh.
There was a couple of mornings, like the next day, the mom would say, phone rang awfully late last night.
Oh, did you fess up or did you go, oh,
she
did they?
knew.
She was smart enough to know.
She knew.
Yeah.
But yes, we talked, and that's exactly what we have to do to keep the sparks alive.
That's exactly right. We do.
We do.
So talk about conversation. Now, you said there's a difference between...
Let's talk about the difference between
do
conversation and communication. So we have conversation just to talk, just to, learn things about each other, just to talk about your day in general, talk about, things that you dream about or that you hope to do someday or things that you used to do, all of those things. I mean, we, just like growing up, you had a best friend and you just would talk. Or how women, can call their mom or their sister or a girlfriend and just talk on the phone for an hour about just, whatever, random things. And that's how spouses should be.
Right.
Hopefully they're best friends and you can go on a car trip, for 6 hours and just have plenty to say. That's the goal anyway. Now, sometimes I'm not saying we have to talk for the whole 6 hours on a car trip, because we certainly don't.
We do talk a long time.
We talk a lot, but it's okay to be silent. We've heard couples that have talked about being introverts and saying, I hope you're okay with some silence every once in a while. So there's nothing wrong with that. But the point of is conversation is just to talk. Now, communication. Whoa!
Sorry about that.
Had an alarm set there. Communication, of course, involves talking, but it's to communicate certain things, I think, is where there's a little fine line there. When with communication, you're trying to get across certain details that need to be spoken. We talk about having expectations in marriage. We go into marriage with expectations, and unmet expectations are what cause problems in marriage. Yeah. And so the more we communicate with each other, the less unmet expectations we're going to have, which means we'll have less problems. That's the goal anyway. And so if we're communicating, our needs with each other, we talk about, you can't just expect your spouse to know what you need, even though you've been married for 30 years. We think, well, they should just know. Well, they don't always. Sometimes they do, but they don't always. We're not mind readers. None of us are.
And that causes such a huge problem when you just think my spouse should know, and they don't.
Exactly. And it's not that they're, insensitive or never listen or whatever. It's just that, like I said, they're not mind readers. So talk. You've got to communicate what you're needing. You've got to communicate what you're feeling. We find that we have to share calendars so that we're on the same page with our schedules and there's not any, miscommunication there, as far as, well, I thought we were going to do this and the other one's thinking, no, I thought we were going to do this. We always know what's coming up on our schedules. There's just a lot of things that involve communication. And so in a minute, we're going to talk a little bit more about conversation, and then we're going to get back to communication and talk about how we can be good communicators. So let's talk for a second about how we can have good conversation.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to get back to conversation. So to have good conversation, we got to spend time together.
Yeah,
Bottom line.
it's hard to talk if you don't.
You can't talk if you're not spending time together.
And you can text, but that's not conversation. That's
Right.
more communication. Usually you text to go, hey, what's on the schedule, or what's this, or what's that.
Right.
But conversation is something that needs to be done face to face.
Sure, yeah. We ran across a statistic that says couples spend uninterrupted time together. This is not, time sitting down to a meal with the kids or in front of a television or whatever. This is just face-to-face, uninterrupted time together. 4 minutes a day
That is not enough.
is what couples get together. And that is, it's not a lot of time. It's not a lot of time to really just have some good conversation.
Yeah. You got to have more than 4 minutes a day
Yeah.
in order to get good conversation in. And so you've got to spend some time. You got to take that road trip or drive somewhere where you're in a car together, or just sit down after the kids go to bed, or if the kids are playing games in the other room, you go to your room and sit there for a little while and just visit.
Take advantage of that. We talk about, how we have coffee time together each day.
Right.
Where we make sure we have time to just talk, where we have time to, communicate what's going on in each other's worlds.
Right.
We also talk about the importance of, having date night, because that affords the opportunity to just have conversation. Taking trips, we talk about how it's pretty important, occasionally to have that getaway together without the kids. Got to spend time together.
That date night is so important for couples for that one reason right there. And again, it drives us nuts when we put something about going on a date and somebody writes on social media, well, you don't know what it's like with kids and to not have a budget. And we do, people.
We have been there.
We have, so stop it.
Yes.
It's just an excuse.
We lived on a single income with 4 children, and we managed
Quit
to
making
go on dates.
excuses for that.
Yes.
You can sit on the porch with your spouse. You can go for a walk around the block. You can go to your room and shut the door if you can't find a babysitter. Do something, but don't come up with an excuse of just going, we can't date, we can't spend time alone together. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's just, yeah. And if you got a new baby, we actually talked about this. You got a new tiny baby, take them on a date with you. Put them in that little car seat and drag them with you. They're going to sleep the whole time anyway.
Yeah, they're not going to be too much of an interruption.
No. But find some time for good conversation. When you go out on that date, quit looking at your phone and look across the table at each other, okay?
Yeah.
But you've got to do that.
That's right. And we've talked about the importance of the dinner table. Don't always sit in front of the TV to eat your meals. Actually go to the dinner table where you can have conversation.
Yeah, we need to
even
fight
if it's
that.
with the kids, but it's still, you're having good conversation with each other, and that's healthy and important in families and marriages.
Now, one of the problems that a lot of couples have, they go, well, we don't know what to talk about. If you don't have any common interests, you're not going to have a lot of things to talk about,
That's
which is
exactly
a part of conversation. You've got to have something other than the kids to talk about. You've got to have something other than, did you pay last month's water bill, to talk about. Find some common interests. We talk about working out together. Lee and I, things that we enjoy together. We talk about working out, what routines we're doing at the gym the next day, what muscle groups. We talk about baseball. We're huge baseball fans. We talk about house projects that we've got going on, whether it's a remodel project or ideas that we've got for something, stuff we're doing around the house, yard work, upcoming events. You got to have some common interests. That's what gives you things to talk about.
That's right. And it could be books and movies and
Yeah.
anything. But
Yeah.
yes, common interests are a must so that you can have some good conversation.
So spend some time, and that means try to find some things you can do together. That means try your spouse's stuff that they like out as well. I have tried things that Lee does. I like most of them, and I can do them with her.
right.
There are some things that we just kind of go, that's just yours, you do it.
Yeah, and that's okay to have
and that's
separate
okay.
interests and to
But
do things apart.
Try some things. Lee has
Yes.
tried a lot of stuff, like going to the gym or whatever it is that I like to do, and she likes it. And there's a few things where she just kind of goes, nah, that's not for me, you do that. But we have learned to have common interests.
Right. And then the things that you don't do together, still take an interest in that, in the fact that you ask about it. And when they tell you about it, you be interested in it. You
Yeah.
know, ask about your husband's fishing trip if you don't go fish with him. Say, tell me all about it.
I've asked, hey, what book are you reading right
Mm-hmm.
now? You're a big reader. What book are you reading right now? And what's the main character whom based on a show we watch, what's all going on in it? And so that gives us something to talk about.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And so we talked earlier about how, even though you might have been married for 30 years, you never know everything about each other. And so keep learning about each other. And we have found something recently called conversation starters. Now, we have included a whole page or two of these in our book, 10 Ways to a Stronger Marriage, of good conversation starters. We include a page of them in our workbook. If you come to one of our workshops, you've seen that. You can Google, conversation starters, and there's probably a dozen books on Amazon that have things. And now what this is like questions about if we could go on, if money wasn't an issue and we could go on vacation anywhere, what would be your dream vacation? And you take turns talking about your dream vacation. And so there are just all kinds of questions, like books full of questions of conversation starters. And these are so great to take on car trips with you, to take, sit down at the dinner table when you're having dinner and talk about one, to take on a date with you or whatever. And you learn things about each other that you really probably didn't know.
Yeah. And sometimes post trip, or talk about, hey, remember the vacation we had last year? Of all the vacations we've had in the last 10 years, what was your favorite? Or we get back from trips and we ask one another silly questions like, what was your favorite thing we ate?
Right.
Or what was your least favorite thing we ate? Or what was your favorite thing that we got to see? And those are all such great conversation starters.
Or what was your least favorite part? And that would be getting
The
sick on the
boat
boat. Yes. So
actually, I like the boat ride because you enjoyed it so
I
much.
did.
I would do it with you again
did.
at any moment.
So yes, conversation starters. Those are healthy. Okay, so let's get back to communication. Let's talk about how we can be good communicators.
Yes.
So this involves being a good listener. First and foremost, we have to be good
I
listeners.
am really glad that I am a good listener. Now, I say that with a little sarcasm because I struggle with that at times.
Well, it's okay.
But I'm trying, and I'm trying to do
Yes.
better, and I am doing better than I used to.
Yes.
And my issue with you may have this issue as well if you're listening to this. My issue is sometimes I think, well, there's two issues I have with listening. Sometimes I think I can do two things at one time, multitask. I can listen to my wife and I can text one of my kids. Or I will be in the middle of texting one of my kids and my wife comes in to talk to me, and the rules should be the person in the room with you is more important than the person you're talking to on your phone. And so I should just set my phone down and come back to that. And I don't look up or don't give, hey, I can't listen right now. I'm doing something.
That's right.
And so I'm working on being a good listener or a better listener, and we need to do that.
Yes.
Eye contact really
Yes.
helps. When I make eye contact, I know I'm listening.
Yeah, and that's why we say, the dinner table, you usually don't have distractions if you're sitting down where you're not in front of the TV, where you don't bring your phones to the table. You don't have distractions. And that's why we say, plan 15 minutes a day where you can just sit down together without those distractions, because distractions keep you from being a good listener. So, like you said, make eye contact so that you know that I know that you're listening to me when you're looking at me.
That's right.
Don't be sitting there thinking what you're going to say next when your spouse is talking to you. Really listen to what they're saying. Don't interrupt, just whatever. Make sure you both have equal time to say whatever it is that needs to be said. And then you wrote here, tell me this, listen without being defensive.
Yeah, I think sometimes,
If you're talking about hard things.
yeah, or even just talking about stuff and you just kind of automatically want to be a little defensive. Sometimes your spouse may not be trying to be defensive. They may just be bringing something up, and listen without being offended. Listen first. And then if you feel like, I didn't do that. I need to tell them I didn't do that. But don't start being offended
Right.
Or defensive. At least give your spouse a chance to say what they're trying to say.
Yes. And sometimes you have to have conversations and communication to work through some issues and some hard times and some problems that you're having, which is a healthy thing to do. We talk about don't sweep things under the rug. You gotta talk about things.
And sometimes when we're defensive, it may mean we're having a conversation about something we don't see eye to eye on. You're talking, and I'm already thinking what I'm going to say next. Mm-hmm. And so give your spouse the opportunity to talk and listen.
Yes. So it takes the frustrating guesswork out of things.
If you communicate
We talked about that. It's those unmet expectations that cause problems. And so if you're constantly communicating with each other, you're taking the guesswork out.
Here's what I need you to do.
You're eliminating problems.
You know, if you're up working around the house trying to get a bunch of stuff, house cleaning jobs done, and you're thinking, well, he's going to notice I'm cleaning the house, and he'll get up at some point and help. I may never notice.
Right.
And if you say nothing and you just kind of get mad, well, you've seen I've been working all day long. It would be so much easier if you had just started with, hey, we have a lot of stuff in the house that needs cleaned.
I really have a long list of
stuff. Could you help me with some of that? It's so much better than just going, he'll notice that I need this.
Yeah.
No, a lot of times we don't.
Yeah.
And so, it takes the frustrating guesswork out of stuff when you just communicate.
That's right. Then you also have to watch your tone. I mean, that's huge. What do we say? 80% of arguments are caused by a tone of voice.
Somebody was using the wrong tone.
And 20% is
legit.
A legitimate. Yeah. So watch your tone, and that can be challenging, especially when you are frustrated. Sometimes you have to just say, maybe if you're really frustrated, you have to say, I need a timeout. Give yourself a timeout. That's okay.
Yep.
But yeah, watch your tone. We often use the harshest tone with the people we love the most. We would never talk to, our coworker, sometimes the way we talk to our spouse and our children when we're frustrated.
And that's sad.
And it is. And it's, it's because we're comfortable with each other and we just can totally be ourselves, but we need to watch that.
I had a friend one time I was riding in their vehicle and a long time ago, and he had a phone call while we were driving. He was driving. He took it on speakerphone, and he was so polite and so nice. Got another phone call. He was so nice and polite. His wife calls, and he answers and goes, "What do you need?" And it was so, I just remember thinking, that is not the same voice that everything was quick and short. It was like, you are bothering me. I don't know what was going on in his world, but I picked up on it really quick. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to do that. But we do that sometimes with one another.
We do.
We need to be cautious.
Sometimes hopefully it's always unintentional.
Yes.
But yes, watch your tone. Timing is important when you're trying to really communicate important things. Like we said, don't do it when there's distractions going on. Don't hit your spouse the minute they walk in the door with something that's important that needs to be talked about. Plan a time when you can both sit down where, it's a good time for you to both talk.
That's right.
Timing is important.
If you have a serious, can I throw this out here, especially to the women folk, and this is really important, and to the men as well, but to the women folk. A lot of times women go, I've tried to tell my husband this and he doesn't really pay a lot of attention, or maybe I didn't do a very good job talking. Timing is important. One of the best things you can do is send your spouse a text or call them and go, hey, would tonight about 9 be a good time for us to sit down and talk? I need just a little bit of your time. And just say that. And they'll say, yes, that would be perfect. And they may say, is everything okay? Or whatever it is. And you say, everything's fine, but there's some things I need to get off my mind or off my chest or whatever it is. And you will get their attention to where they're going to sit down and they're just going to pay attention. And have that meeting. You shut the door. You don't beat around the bush. You don't drop hints. You pour yourself out there, and you don't just go, well, I caught him in a commercial of the football game and thought maybe I could tell him I needed such and such. You don't do that every time, but when there's something really big that you need him to get or her to get, plan that meeting and go, I just need a little of your time tonight. Let's schedule
when
this.
is a good time? Yes.
Yeah. Be open about things that frustrate you. If there's something your spouse is doing that's frustrating you, they need to know it and let them know.
That's right. And just be open in general. I mean, this is a huge part of communication, is just be open with your spouse. And we've talked about that in several episodes about how openness and honesty is just huge in marriage.
So can I give them a homework challenge?
Absolutely.
And us close out here? We would love to challenge you, especially, and I know not all of you listen with your spouse, but a lot of y'all do, to have some coffee time this week is what we call it. To have some time where it's just you two, about 20 minutes a day, where you just sit down and have some time together. Plan a time. Just say, hey, tonight after we get the kids bedded down, let's go sit down in our bedroom and talk. I always say that because we have chairs in our bedroom. But let's find some time this week, whether it's a date or whether it's at home when the kids are there, just to say, hey, let's just have about 20 minutes today just to sit down and let's talk about things we got coming up or things that we've done, and have both some conversation and some communication.
Right. And that may, at first you may be like, well, we don't know what we're even supposed to talk about. And it may be kind of weird at first. But when you make this a routine, it's not weird. And you just, you'll find how essential it is.
It is. It's important. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your time. Getaway weekend in Dallas, Texas. Registration's open and it's filling up fast.
That's going to be so fun.
It is going to be fun. If you want more information, TreyandLee.com, and we are glad you've come our way.
Yep. See you next week.